is the fact that we've went from a solely over-the-phone application process to a online process. People can just do it whenever they wish. They can do it at 2 a.m. in the morning. So like anything that's starting fresh and new, there's always going to be some hiccup here and there. But I think what's really, really wonderful is that there's this amazing rapport that's going on with the community. Stuff happens.
Yes,
Life happens. You can't really control that. You're talking about, possibly being evicted from the place that you're living in. You're being removed from a place where you have a roof over your head. I think what's been the most rewarding is hearing the relief in people's voices.
Inform, connect, inspire. The Post Podcast.
Welcome to the Post Podcast, where we aim to inform, connect, and inspire our community members. Today, we have a special guest from the Toronto Rent Bank that's here to talk about the resources and how you were able to connect with it. Welcome, Kabilash.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the neighborhood.
Thanks, man.
For listeners who may not know, can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, well, my name is Kabilash, like you said. And for the last 2 years, I have been working as a applicant support worker on the sort of call center or applicant support line for Neighborhood Information Post that helps clients apply for Toronto Rent Bank, which is, to help them with their rent, or emergency energy fund that helps out with their utilities like hydro, gas, stuff like that.
That's really cool. It's nice to have you here because, I actually know Kabilash from back from high school. So it's just funny how things just kind of come together and I get to work with you again.
I know. 10 years. It's like we talked about this on the way here. 10 years.
Yeah. I know we may look like brothers, but surprisingly, we're not.
We're not. No, but we got confused for each other.
That's happened
very, very often.
Yes. So could you tell us more about Toronto Rent Bank program and what your role is?
Sure. Well, the Toronto Rent Bank program is this sort of city-driven sort of program that is meant to aid renters when it comes to their rent. If a Toronto resident has fallen behind on their rent for 1 month or a couple of months, or if we have a resident who's trying to move to a new address that falls within the Toronto limits, they can reach out to the Toronto Rent Bank and see if they're eligible and see if they can put an application through. The intent is for them to see if they're eligible, and if they're deemed eligible by an intake worker or a caseworker, anything like that, they are then provided with the financial support that they need to either remedy the arrears or overdue rent that they've accumulated, or if it comes to paying first and last month's rent for a new address, they are able to cover that payment with the amount that we provide them.
Roughly, how long would this process usually take once they call you?
Unfortunately, there's no specific amount of time that can be set as to how long it takes. There are numerous factors involved in the process, and a lot of them I can't really speak for myself as an applicant support worker. What I can say is that one major shift that we've kind of experienced recently is the fact that we've went from a solely over-the-phone application process to a online process. So when I started, because I've been working at Neighborhood Information Post for about 2 years now, when I started, it was solely over the phone. So clients would call the Applicant Support Line number, and they would reach out to us saying that they were interested in putting an application through, whether it be for rental arrears, for their overdue rent, or for a rental deposit for the first and last month's sort of rent for a new address. So they'd reach out to us. We would go through the eligibility over the phone, and then once they're deemed eligible by us, the applicant support worker, we on our end would then put an application through for them, a pre-screening application, which would take about 15 to 20 minutes.
Oh, I see. So now you can literally just do it on your own. You don't need to be on the call anymore.
Well, yeah. Now with the online service, people can just do it whenever they wish. Mm-hmm. They can do it at 2 a.m. in the morning if they want to. And it's also, there's no rush. With the previous process, again, it's a 15 to 20 minute kind of span of time, which, which does kind of put a limit on the number of questions a client could ask. Obviously, we're not going to cut a call with the client if it goes beyond that time, but obviously our intent is to help as many clients as we can in a given time period or a given shift. Whereas with the online service, a lot of the questions that a client may have are regularly available with the applicant resources section on the website.
Oh, so like it can literally be a section where frequently asked questions.
Basically, yeah. And a lot of the online sort of setup is made in such a way that it is easily accessible and understandable. And obviously, when you're doing it online, you always have the benefit of reaching out to a family member or a friend who might be able to assist you. And then you also have individuals who are not technologically savvy who may need assistance, so they can always reach out to whoever they need to reach out to, on top of reaching out to us. We're also a resource there as well.
Well, out of curiosity, for the website where they fill up the forms, do they have different languages available?
Well, there is a translating feature. There is built-in technology that can assist a client in terms of translating what is being asked of you on the application form through the online platform. In terms of a client reaching out to the ASL, the Applicant Support Line, obviously we don't have every language covered in terms of assisting a client.
Obviously,
but we do have the occasional. We do have, for example, if I were to speak for myself on my behalf, I am fluent in Tamil. So if there is a client reaching out, inquiring about the program, inquiring about the services of the program, but again, they have this language barrier. English is not their first language, but they are fluent in Tamil. Then you would have a ASW or applicant support worker reaching out to me saying that there is a Tamil speaker who is hoping to understand the program, but again, there's this barrier that's existing. Do you mind helping out? And then that would just lead to me pairing up with that client and helping them as best I can in their language, so in the language that they're comfortable in.
When they give you guys a call, let's say you're not available, like, is there multiple people that speak the same language, or would they like give you a backlog and you would have to call them later?
Well, if someone is not available, there's always the possibility that we can have their number set aside if need be, or again, we interact through messages on our own end. So I can get someone reaching out to me saying that this client called, and we can always see if we can reach out back to that client with a voicemail of some kind, or actually reach out to them and as best as we can. But yeah.
So you guys usually reach out through call and voicemail. Is there anything else you guys do, like email or anything?
Well, primarily it's a call center, so it's ASW. So clients would call and reach out to us through the respective numbers, and we'll help them as best as we can. Yeah,
sounds good.
But again, like I said, that it's because of the possible limitations that may come from a over the phone only procedure, was why there's been this transfer to this online website that is easily applicable and accessible at any point, and the process is not being rushed through. The client can take their time with it, and the client can do it at a point where they have their own respective supports and resources that they may need to do such an application. For example, a client may be calling in with the language barrier, but they're calling in at a time where, for example, they don't have a friend, a family member who can translate for them. So they're hoping that someone at the call center could translate for them. Now, if there is no one who can speak that language, unfortunately, that's a barrier. That's going to be a wall that they're going to be hitting. Now, if they were doing the application online, they can do it at their own time, and they can do it at a point where that friend or family member is also available,
and they can help them
so that they can do it together at their own respective time at which they are comfortable to do it, and at their own pace.
Yeah, I see this as a absolute win for those who just like think about it. Some people are working during those hours too, so that you guys would be during the call center. So it's good to have more hours available for them to be able to sign up on their own time.
100%.
Would you say there's any cons to this new system?
Well, like anything, it's a system that's just started. So there are obviously going to be some little things here and there that need to be straightened out.
Yeah.
But we have gone into it with the assurance that a lot of these sort of issues that clients have been facing these clients have reached out to us regarding these technical issues
You guys
and been giving us some wonderful insight and feedback, which has been taken in with stride. So like anything that's starting fresh and new, there's always going to be some hiccup here and there. But I think what's really, really wonderful is that there's this amazing rapport that's going on with the community, where clients have reached back saying certain things, positive and positive feedback, and also some critiques to improve. And again, we have been taking them in stride. All in favor of just improving and getting better.
Making it easier, more efficient, and it's not everyone's time is accounted for.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, the whole idea with the website just seems to be about being efficient and effective supports. So that's what we're driving towards. That's what we're trying to aim for. So that's kind of the end goal at the end of the day.
Can you just tell us what a typical day on the support line is?
Typical day just involves us logging into queue and waiting for clients to reach out to us. We take their calls and we introduce ourselves in the calls. We say who we are. We say them what kind of service they've reached out to in this case. We obviously want to clarify with them if that's the service they want to reach out to. You know, a client could want rent bank support, but they've accidentally joined the queue for emergency energy fund. So we want to just confirm what they're actually asking for, because they may say in their explanation, I'm looking for rental assistance. So you want to just clarify. So you're looking to get help from the rent bank program, and you just want to make sure that that is the support that they're looking for, instead of applying them for a support that they don't need. So you want to just confirm that, make sure that they know what they're signing up for. And you know, if it's the emergency energy fund program, you'd want to make sure that they consent to everything. You want to make sure that they consent. The same thing with the rent bank as well, but you want to make sure that consent is established in some manner before moving forward. And then you answer the questions as best as you can. And if it's the emergency energy fund program, establish consent, make sure the client's eligible, and then moving forward with an application.
When they give you a call, how would you say, like, if they feel like a little worried, a little scared, because this might be the first time they're signing up for these kind of services? How do you reassure them that there's nothing fishy or anything wrong going on?
Yeah, no, I mean,
people have these concerns.
Yeah, well, a lot of the time the clients are calling since they have learned about us through friends or colleagues or from family members, or they've learned about us through the Toronto website. So they've seen that information through the Toronto website, which is a trust. You know, if you look at the Toronto website, you know that's a trustworthy site. So they come in, you know, a lot of times clients do come in with that trust, and they're just inquiring more about the program. But there have been clients who have called in who are worried, whether because they don't trust the service, in the sense that they just don't know what they're getting into. Or a lot of clients are calling in because they feel really bad about themselves, because they view the idea of being behind on your rent or being behind on their utility bills as being this negative thing. It is a mark of them being lazy or not responsible, which is far from the truth, in my opinion. Stuff happens. Life happens. You can't really control that. So you have clients calling in with that kind of you know, self-deprecating mindset. And it's my responsibility, along with other members of the applicant support line, to reassure them that this is not your fault. Stuff happens. Let's try to see if we can find a way for you to remedy it.
Well, I'm glad it's going to the people that are in need of the service. You're telling me about these two different programs. Could you talk about how grants are given? What's the process of making sure someone's applicable for these grants?
Well, when we're talking about the rent bank program, for example, if a client is looking to apply, they would again go through the online process, and they would see if they first meet all the eligibility criteria. So in their in the path that they're following through, they would first go online, set up an account under their name. Once they set up an account, they'd then be able to open up an application within that account. And they can pick which specific application they need. If it's an arrears application, that means they're looking to get support for their overdue rent. If it's a rental deposit application, that means they're looking to get help with first and last month's rent if they're moving to a new address. So they pick what type of application it is, and then they'll be able to actually answer the questions. But prior to them actually filling out their personal info, like their name, date of birth, email, phone number, all that stuff, they're going to go through a series of essentially yes or no questions that essentially confirm if the client is eligible or not. And that list of eligibility or our basic eligibility criteria need to be met in order for the client to move forward successfully into actually starting an application.
What are the eligibility criteria for Toronto Rent Bank program?
Well, there's quite a lot, obviously. And again, if a client is to put an application through to the online website, they'll see the sort of yes or no questions that are basically the criteria. But just to go through maybe 2 or 3 of them. First, if we're talking about, for example, within the Toronto Rent Bank, there is the rental arrears application for overdue rent. If we're talking about the eligibility for that specifically, first and foremost, a client has to be overdue on their rent. They have to be behind on their rent or in arrears.
Before day of, it has to be fully late.
They have to be fully and officially behind on their rent. So they don't necessarily have to wait until they received a notice. They don't have to wait until they receive some sort of indication like that. If the client knows when they have to owe their rent and they are officially behind when it comes to that deadline, or they have passed the deadline and they have not paid the money, then they are considered eligible as far as that criteria is concerned. Okay. That's only one of the criteria. Another one of the criteria is that a client would have to be living in the city of Toronto in order to be eligible for a rental arrears support.
How would you know you're specifically in Toronto? Like, what will be considered? Like, how would you know?
Well, it comes down to their postal code. So if their postal code begins with M, so M as in Michael, M as in mother, M as in Matthew, if it begins with the letter M in your postal code, then that specific address where you're residing is officially in the city of Toronto. So that can be Scarborough, Etobicoke, North York, downtown Toronto, all that. It's within the Toronto space.
Is that necessary to say Toronto? It just has to have the M.
It has to have the M. And, that can be confirmed when you put in your address for the application, that you'll be asked of that in the eligibility. But as long as you have the M in the beginning of your postal code, you are officially in Toronto. Clients who have postal codes that begin with L as in lady or N as in Nancy, those specific postal codes, those are unfortunately outside the city of Toronto limits. So those would be like your Markhams, your Vaughns, but again, not officially in the city of Toronto. So if a client is in that type of an address with that postal code of L or N, and they're looking to apply for the Toronto Rent Bank program, they would unfortunately be ineligible to apply. At which point they can reach out to 211, for example, their Ontario operator, and see if there is a city-specific rental support program for where they're residing.
Okay.
But that's, again, another one of the eligibilities. A third among the list is that a client would have to be receiving a verifiable and eligible source of income. So that can be, one example is employment. So if they're full-time or part-time in terms of their employment status, they can also be self-employed. That is eligible. Or they can be receiving EI, whether it be unemployment or maternity leave support. EI is also eligible. If they're receiving OSAP as a student or receiving pension, CPP, or old age security as a senior citizen, any of those fall under the category of being eligible sources of income. Where they might be ineligible, or the caveats in this case, is if a client has no income whatsoever, which means that they obviously are not eligible, or if a client is receiving income, but unfortunately that income is a social assistance, like Ontario Works or Ontario Disability. In that instance, the client would not be eligible for the Toronto Rent Bank program.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
So that's another of the eligibility. That's only 3 of the many. There are a list of them, but those are 3 examples when it comes to rental arrears. Now, there's the other service, rental deposit for first and last month's rent, with a lot of the same eligibility. For example, income is still a requirement. But that's one example in terms of eligibility. But in the case of a client moving to a new location, which is why they need a rental deposit application to help cover their first and last month's rent, there are some slight differences in terms of eligibility. One of them being, it doesn't matter where you are currently living per se, but if you are moving, your final address has to be in the city of Toronto. So whereas for the rental arrears, it's where you are residing. That's the core focus. And if that's in the city of Toronto, you're eligible. And if not, you're not. For rental deposit, for where you're moving to, if you are living outside of the city of Toronto, but you're moving to a location or address in the city of Toronto, as long as the final address has that M postal code and is in the city of Toronto, you are eligible.
In the beginning.
So let's say, for example, I want to move from Markham to Toronto.
That's
That's eligible.
eligible.
You are eligible to.
And also, let's say I'm living in Toronto and leaving. Is that still eligible?
That's not, if you're living in Toronto, you're leaving to Markham. Yeah, that's not eligible. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to the final address.
I see. Okay, that makes sense.
So again, the final address has to be in the city of Toronto in order to be eligible for the program. So again, if you are in Toronto and you're moving to Vaughan, where the postal code does not begin with M, then unfortunately you face a snag there. But if you're living in Vaughan and you're moving to a Toronto specific address where the postal code begins with M, then you are eligible. So that's the address eligibility there, for example.
Do you have to be Canadian to get these services, or could you not have your Canadian citizenship and still use these programs?
As far as basic eligibility is concerned, there's no delving into that. I can only really speak for basic eligibility as an ASW. So I'm only discussing stuff like income, where you're residing, all that sort of stuff. If those eligibility criteria are fulfilled, then a client can put an application through. So that's really what I can speak on behalf of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are the most common reasons people call?
Overdue rent is a major one. And if clients are moving to a new address, that's another one. I think of the two, it's more to do with overdue rent, but both services are available and both services are being used. But again, like I said, the clients are able to apply to the online site for that, but they do reach out and inquire about the program and ask questions and get some clarifications about the program. When it comes to the Emergency Energy Fund, again, that's regarding your hydro and gas bills. A majority of it is clients calling in with overdue hydro bills, and they're trying to prevent any possible disconnection from happening, being cut from their hydro. So a lot of clients call them that.
For the other grant for the utilities, is it the same process, the things you mentioned?
Well, for EEF, there is no online site as it is with the rent bank program. With EEF, it's highly recommended that a client if they are looking to get access to that support, they reach out to us and see if an application can be done over the phone.
Okay.
So in that case, a client again would call us, reach out to us. They would then again go through the eligibility, but instead of going through it like the yes or no questions on the online site, we as applicant support workers would ask them questions and determine if they meet those requirements.
Is there anything they should have ready when they call you?
Ideally, if they have, for example, if they're calling for overdue hydro bills, if they have their hydro account number, that's ideal. Obviously, you want to, there is a section in the application where we do ask if a client is able to provide with the account number. And on top of that, it's highly recommended that they call in with some idea as to how much they're in arrears or overdue.
Okay.
So you have clients calling in who have to kind of estimate, which, it is preferred that you provide us with as much detail as possible.
Yeah.
Because there's no harm in adding more detail and having, it's a benefit to have.
The benefit, yeah.
To have that all
get
there.
more of an easier process and to get through.
Well, just to paint a clear picture of what your situation is. And that obviously involves how much you're overdue by. So if you have a specific value there, that'll be preferred.
What are the eligibility criteria for Emergency Energy Fund?
So the Emergency Energy Fund, so that is for your utilities. So again, you could see some through lines from what we discussed with the rent bank program. Again, income is one. When it comes to the income, again, a client would have to have a verifiable source of income in order to be eligible. So again, that could be full-time or part-time employment. That could be EI. Where there's a slight difference is that a client who is receiving Ontario Works or Ontario Disability, they would face an obstacle when it comes to the rent bank program in terms of applying, but they would not face an obstacle in terms of applying for their utility support. In the case of the EEF program, there is a subcategorical application or program, that is the LEAP program, that is meant to be accessible for Ontario Works recipients and Ontario Disability recipients. So if a client is receiving Ontario Works actively, they might be able to put an application through for the LEAP program if all other criteria are being met. That's one difference there. But again, it also comes down to a lot of similar ones. For example, when it comes to EEF and LEAP, again, you need to be residing in Toronto specific address. And another more specific criteria for EEF and LEAP is that the client's name has to be on the bill of their hydro bills, their gas bills. When it comes to EEF, again, it's hydro or gas. That's the support. LEAP is primarily hydro. That's a hydro only support, whereas EF is hydro and gas. But either way, the eligibility regarding the bills is that their name has to be on the bills.
So how does that work with the landlord?
In terms of their name being on the bill,
Yeah, like if their name's on the bill, how would the client be able to sign, like, get eligibility for this?
So if their name is not on the bill and it is, for example, their landlord's name on the bill, then they wouldn't be eligible until they're able to speak to the landlord and have it involve the provider in some way of the hydro, but find a way to add their name to the bill or have their name officially added to the bill in order for them to be eligible for the program. So that's something they may have to look into further with their landlord or with the hydro provider or whoever.
Would it be possible that, let's say I'm at work, could my son or cousin apply for me?
No, ideally, when it comes down to it, it's the client's name that needs to be on the bill, and we would want to speak with the client when it comes to this bill. That just comes down to making sure that the information being provided, all that sort of stuff, is secure. We don't want anyone to take up identity, and we don't want anything to kind of extrapolate from that type of falsehood. So we want to make sure that the client who is reaching out to us is who they are. It's their name on the bill, and they are speaking with us. Just to lay the foundation of transparency, so the process can run hopefully smoothly.
But somebody can be on the call with them to help.
Of course, we have clients who, again, have language barriers, or again, who may just are in an emotional state where they're not able to just do this on their own. And so you do have clients who are calling in with a friend, but there are steps in which eligibility and consent can be looked into while both are on the call, a three-way call, or putting on a speakerphone while the client is officially there. But either way, it's our responsibility as ASWs, as applicant support workers, to ensure that the client in question has consented to everything involved. Make sure that they are comfortable with everything involved. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for going through that step by step.
No worries.
How has the demand for the program changed over time for both the rent bank and the emergency energy fund?
Well, in both cases, clients are obviously facing this increasing struggle to keep up with their rent and their utilities. So obviously these programs are available for them to reach out to and see if they can get the assistance that they need. Primarily, if we're going to talk more so about the rent bank program, I can say that especially in the last kind of recent span of time, there has been the uptick of a greater desire for rental relief and rental support. More of a need for those resources for clients. So the fact that we have this online service that's available for clients to kind of put an application through, and it's far more easily accessible, is, I think, a great positive. But again, there is that uptick. There still is that rising need for those services, and there are a large volume of applications coming through for that specific support. So that sort of program, that assistance is there for clients to reach out to and go through and see if they're eligible and see if they can get the assistance that they need.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to let the viewers know? Anything that's more important?
Well, I'm primarily about the fact that we've kind of transitioned to this online website. I think it's a really, really awesome thing, like resource out there for people to really get into. The fact that a lot of the questions that they may have may already be outlined in the applicant resources section. The fact that they can do it at their own pace, at their own time, that's a big positive. But that website has been this wonderful, wonderful thing, I think, and a lot of clients have been putting applications through.
It just became such a more easier process once that website came in.
It's certainly, I would say, from my own opinion perspective, it certainly streamlined a lot of things. So I think it's a benefit in that regard.
It just made everyone's lives easier once this website got out.
Well, it's at the end of the day, it's always about the client. So the fact that the client is, you kind of mentioned this earlier, but if a client is working your standard, 9 to 5 shift, they're not going to be able to call in and apply for the program, and because we're only open within that span of time, 9 to 4:30. So if a client can't reach out to us, then how are they going to get that resource? So the fact that the website exists is to help clients in that situation. They have to work, obviously. They have to make money. They have to support their family.
Exactly.
But the fact that we have this online website is, I think, a bonus. Because again, you can get off of work, relax, and immediately dive into this process.
Yeah. And do it at your own pace. Like, you have to streamline. You have to do it within 20 minutes. You could take as much time as you want.
You can take as much time as you want. You can stop it.
Throughout. Like, let's say I only have 5 minutes to do it real quick and then take a big break to do something else. Would it save on the website? Or
it should, yeah.
It should?
If you set up the account, you start the application, and you go through the process, if you only get to the point where you're only filling out your name and date of birth and all that sort of stuff, and then immediately have to kind of tap out and go, it should be saved. There's little markers at the bottom that would say save completed or information that's been saved, or some sort of indicator at the corner that would say that the information that you put in so far has been saved.
What's great.
So you have that there.
People that need that time and space, even if you only have 5 minutes, start it, work on it throughout the day, and get it done.
Exactly. And then the client can just log out and then log back in at a later time, and they can just go to the application that they've already opened, and they can see the amount that they've already put in so far.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
From your time working here, is there anything, any experiences or anything that you would say was amazing about working here in this industry?
I think what's been the most rewarding is hearing the relief in people's voices, which has been something that's been really wonderful. So when you're talking to someone and you're describing the program, you're describing the services, you're going through eligibility, a client may come in sounding scared or nervous, like you mentioned earlier, not knowing what they're getting into. They have no idea what's happening. This is their first time they're in a situation like this. How do I do it? How do I do it? How do I get out of this, all the suffering that I'm in? Because it's a mental toll, to say the least, right? You're talking about, possibly being evicted from the place that you're living in. You're being removed from a place where you have a roof over your head because you haven't been keeping up with the rent.
Or just getting behind on paying stuff.
Yeah.
It just keeps on adding.
It's a mental toll. So when clients reach out with that nervousness, with that sort of sadness, it's our responsibility to make them feel in some way relieved as best as we can. And, if a client comes out sounding relieved or sounding a bit more reassured, you can hear the happiness kind of back in their voice. I think that's a positive. And I think that's always been rewarding for me.
For these grants, do they have to eventually pay it back, or is it just, it's paid, you're good?
No, in its current iteration, when it comes to the Toronto Rent Bank program and the Emergency Energy Fund / LEAP program, they are grant programs. So the idea is that they would be eligible for the program. They would move through to the process. If the intake worker deems that they are fit, eligible, all that sort of stuff, then they get the support that they need. And that's essentially where the process ends. There is no repayment involved. Again, in its current form, in its current iteration, yeah.
It's really nice, just have that one bill off.
Yeah, it's a positive thing, just to get that out of the way, because a lot of the times clients, it's just that one thing holding them back. So if something like that can be cleared, I think it's a positive.
You're doing great work, Kabilash.
Thanks, man.
Well, that's all we have for today. It was nice having you.
It was nice to be had here.
Is there any last words you want to say to our guests?
Well, there are other resources that I might want to highlight if possible.
Go for it.
So obviously, if a client isn't eligible for the Toronto Rent Bank program or not eligible for the Emergency Energy Fund program, that could be for a variety of reasons. But a lot of the times we do provide them with additional resources because we don't want to leave those clients empty-handed. We don't want to just turn them around with nothing. We want to provide them with something at least so that they can follow through with other avenues of support and see if they can get the help that they need. So obviously, if a client, for example, is not eligible for the rent bank program, we do sometimes offer them the City of Toronto contact or operating number, or we can also provide them with the Ontario operating number if need be. So the first City of Toronto, that's 311, just 311. So you just dial it as is. The same manner that you dial 911 for an emergency, you just dial 311 and it'll take you direct to that line where you'd be in queue. Or there's 211, that's the Ontario operating number. So again, same idea, you just dial the number as is and it'll take you to that queue. And that's more of a general resource to learn more, to gain more information if need be. There is also the housing help number that's available for clients. And there's also, specifically when it comes to utilities, there is the Ontario Electricity Support Program that clients may be interested in reaching out to see if they can get some assistance regarding their bills. The hydro bills.
That's the biggest relief when we can get those things out of the way.
Yeah. So if you're looking to apply for the Toronto Rent Bank program, feel free to visit www.torontorentbank.ca, go through the process and see if you can get an account set up and an application started under your name for rental arrears or rental deposit. If you want to reach out to the Applicant Support Line, feel free to call 416-397-7368. Again, 416-397-7368. And just ask any questions, any inquiries, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Thank you so much for coming, Kabilash. Please like, comment, subscribe. All the information, all the resources will be in the description. And see you in the neighborhood.